Hi everyone, and welcome back to First the Coffee Crochet. In this tutorial we're going to go over how to do the Willow Shawl Pattern. So this is a triangle shawl, and it's worked using the double crochet in a chain space along with the moss stitch. It is a pretty easy pattern to make. You don't need to know any complicated stitches or anything, and we'll go over the single crochet and double crochet as we go through this tutorial in case you need to know how to do that. So this pattern is in US terms. The initial chains at the start of the row do not count as a stitch except where it is noted in the pattern, and that is on the double crochet rows. So as you work through the pattern, each row will add 4 stitches to your row count. And the finished size of the shawl when it's laid flat is 30 inches high by 62 inches wide across the top. You can change the size of this pattern by adjusting the amount of times that you do the repeat rows, which are rows 11 through 21. For this pattern, I used 870 yards of a number 4 medium weight yarn, and the yarn that I used is Caron Blossom Cakes yarn, and it was in the color Tropical Blooms. You'll also need a 6mm crochet hook, a yarn needle to weave in your ends. Stitch markers can be a good idea to help you keep track of your end stitches, and a pair of scissors. As always, there is a written pattern for this available on my website, and I'll leave a link for that down in the description below. And if you like using Caron Blossom Cakes and you like shawls, I have another shawl pattern that uses the same yarn, and it is a rectangular shawl, and I'll also leave another link for that down in the description below. So let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, we're going to create our slip knot. For a foundation chain, we're going to make a chain of 4. And now we're just going to use a slip stitch to join the first and last stitch together. So that'll give us a little circle, and we're going to start our shawl from this. So for row 1, we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to do 2 single crochets into this circle. So we're just going to insert our hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on our hook. Do that one more time. Now we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to do 2 more single crochets into this ring. So counting this chain 2, that's going to give us a total of 6 stitches. So this is going to be our straight edge, and where this chain is, that's going to be our point going out, and these are going to be our 2 sides. So for row 2, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn our work. Now this chain 1 won't count as a stitch, and in this first stitch here, we're going to do 2 single crochets. Then we're going to chain 1, we're going to skip this next stitch, and then we're going to do a single crochet into this chain 2 space here. Then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do another single crochet into that chain 2 space. Right, so we're going to chain 1 again, skip the next stitch, and then in this last stitch we're going to do 2 single crochet stitches. So that'll increase our stitch count by 4, so we'll have a total of 10 stitches in row 2. For row 3, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn our work. Again, this won't count as a stitch. In this first stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochets. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the next stitch, and then in this chain space here, we're going to do a single crochet. We're going to chain 1, and in our chain 2 space, which is our corner, we're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and then do another single crochet into that chain 2 space. Then we're going to chain 1, skip this stitch, and in the next chain space we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then in the last stitch we're going to do 2 single crochets. So for row 4, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be continuing our moss stitch, which is what we've done in this previous row. And we're going to keep repeating this up through row 10. So for each of these rows, you're going to chain 1 at the beginning. And you're going to turn your work. In the first stitch, you're going to do 2 single crochets. You're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then in the next chain space you're going to do a single crochet, and you're just going to repeat that, chain 1, skip a stitch, in the next chain space do a single crochet. So you'll repeat that up to the corner. When you're done your last chain 1 and you're at the last stitch before your corner, in that chain 2 space you're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and then do a single crochet in that chain, in that same chain space. Now for the rest of the row we're just going to chain 1, skip a stitch, do a single crochet in the next chain space. I'm going to chain 1, repeat that all the way down to the end till you've done the last chain 1 and you only have 1 stitch left in the row, and you're going to do 2 single crochets in that last stitch. And that'll increase your row count by 4. We'll go over the repeat row one more time for row 5. So at the beginning of these rows you're going to chain 1, and it's not going to count as a stitch. You're going to turn your work. You're going to do 2 single crochets into the first stitch. You're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then in the next chain space here you're going to do a single crochet. You're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch. Just repeat this all the way up until the corner when you only have 1 stitch in the chain 2 space left of your corner, which is right here. So this is the last stitch before the corner, and then we have the chain 2 space right here. In the chain 2 space we're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and then 1 single crochet all into that same space. Then we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, then in the next chain space do a single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch. Just repeat that until you have 1 stitch left in the row. Okay, so after you've done the last single crochet in the last chain space, and you chain 1, and you've skipped the next to the last stitch, in the last stitch you're going to do 2 single crochets. So just repeat that all the way up through row 10. You can go ahead and pause the video and I'll meet you back here at the end of row 10. Okay, so once you're done with row 10, I'm doing a smaller swatch here so you'll have a bigger piece that you're working on. For row 11, what we're going to do is we're going to start our double crochet chain space rows. And these are all going to be the same type of row. You're just going to do a repeat of these throughout the pattern. So for these rows, you're going to chain 3 and then turn your work. And the chain 3 at the start of these rows does count as a stitch, and it'll count as a double crochet. Then we're going to do another double crochet into that first stitch. So you'll yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2, then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2. Then you'll chain 1, skip the next stitch, and do a double crochet into the following chain space. And then chain 1, skip the next stitch. You're just going to repeat this, double crochet into the chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch. And repeat this all the way up until you're at the corner. Okay, so we're chaining 1. We're at the last stitch before our chain 2 space at the corner. And in the chain 2 space, we're going to do 1 double crochet, chain 2, and do another double crochet into that chain 2 space. Right, then we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then we're just going to do the same thing we did up this side. We're going to do double crochet into the next chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and just repeat that on down. Double crochet in the next chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch. Just repeat this until you're at the last stitch of the row. Okay, so I've done the last double crochet and chaining 1, skipping the next to last stitch, and then in the last stitch here we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches. Okay, so for row 12, and this is going to be the row that you repeat between your double crochet chain space rows. You're going to chain 1, turn your work. This won't count as a stitch. We're going to go back doing a moss stitch. So in that first stitch here, we're going to do 2 single crochets. Then we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch. In the next chain space here, we're going to do a single crochet. Chain 1, skip the next stitch. Single crochet into the chain space, chain 1, skip a stitch. So just repeat this all the way up until you're at the corner. Right, so we've done the last chain 1, we're skipping over the last stitch at the corner, and then in the chain 2 space at the corner, we're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and do another single crochet into that same chain space. We're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and just repeat this on down the side again. Do a single crochet into the next chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet into the next chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch. Repeat that all the way down until you have the last stitch of the row left. Okay, so I've done the last chain 1, get the last 2 stitches, which is the double crochet and that chain 3. So when you're at the end of these rows, what we're going to do is do 2 single crochets into the space between the chain 3 and the double crochet. Now you repeat rows 11 and 12 up through row 16. So row 13 will be a repeat of row 11, row 14 a repeat of row 12, row 15 a repeat of row 11, row 16 a repeat of row 12. Then for rows 17 through 21, again we're going to go back into doing these moss stitch rows here. So again, you'll chain 1 at the beginning of those rows, and this is for rows 17 through 21. Turn your work. In the first stitch, do 2 single crochets. And again, I'm doing a sample swatch, so you should have 3 of these double crochet chain space rows with the moss stitch row after it. You're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, in the next chain space do a single crochet. Chain 1, skip the next stitch. Just repeat the single crochet in the chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch. Do that all the way up until you're at the corner. Once you're at the corner, you've done the last chain 1 before the corner, you skip the last stitch before the corner. In the chain 2 space of your corner, you're going to do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and then do another single crochet into that same chain space. And you're just going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then do the moss stitch down the side. So you'll do a single crochet into the chain space, chain 1, skip the next stitch. Just repeat that all the way down until you have 1 stitch left in the row. Okay, so after you've done the last chain, you got the next to the last stitch that you're skipping, and then in that last stitch do 2 single crochet stitches. And you'll just repeat that same thing up through row 21. After row 21, you're going to go back into doing the double crochet chain space again. So rows 22 through 87 are just repeating rows 11 through 21 a total of 6 more times. If you want to keep going after that to make the shawl bigger, you can. Just make sure that you have enough yarn to cover adding extra to this. After you're done with row 87, or wherever you choose to stop, you can go ahead and fasten off and weave in your ends and enjoy your new shawl. Thanks for watching.